Hello, folks. This is the No Name Cinema Society. Welcome back. This is our classic movie discussion, as you can see from the slide here. And we got a big one in store for you tonight. Hello, all. My name is Jonathan Betzler. I'm one of your hosts for this evening, and we are going to be discussing Casablanca tonight, considered one of the all-time greats. We'll see if my cohorts feel about it. Speaking of which, let me introduce them. First, a crusading hero resisting the evil regime. Ladies and gentlemen, J.B. Joseph.
That's me. That is me.
And, of course, my other co-host is our snarky, corrupt official, J Money.
Nicer things have never been said about me, JB.
Well, I like to stay consistent in that regard. Guys, it's August 10th, 2017, and I've got one of your favorite segments here, August 10th in history, some things that happened today in history. In 1831, on this very day, Nat Turner led his slave uprising as depicted in the film Birth of a Nation. I don't know if you guys saw that film.
The new one.
Yeah, it came out last year. In 1950, Sunset Boulevard premiered for the first time, and it's a movie we haven't talked about yet, but maybe will somewhere down the line. And in 1981, on this day, August 10th in history, Pete Rose broke the National League record for the most hits in a career. And Davy Joe, he did it as a Philadelphia Philly.
Right.
And, of course, today is Justin Theroux's 46th birthday. So happy birthday to Justin Theroux, who you may know from The Leftovers, the TV show. Also, some of his more famous movies would be Mulholland Drive, I believe. So, guys, anything about any of those fun facts, August 10th in history?
Hang tough, Justin Theroux. We're with you. 46
years old today. Davey, anything?
No, I'm good.
Don't care. Great.
Does not care at all. No.
Here's the evening schedule, guys. We used to call it the evening schedule. Really, it's a schedule of our last 2 weeks. On Thursday, August 3rd, we talked about Atomic Blonde. You can see that on the interwebs now. A few days ago, August 6th, we talked about The Sound of My Voice. That was one of our Sunday indie spotlights. Now, of course, is our classic movie discussion. Here, August 10th, Casablanca. And in 5 days, August 15th, we're going to talk about The Sound Off, our 25th Sound Off, which is our free-form segment. And we're going to be doing lots of fun things, including counting down our top 5 films that we reviewed last year. And that's coming up on the next Sound Off in 5 days. Now, it's trivia tidbit time, guys. And it might be the first one that I gave on the show, which was our Mary Poppins show, is that our next classic was the most famous movie starring someone in my apartment. And that's my Los Angeles apartment. So it was a very weird little clue. But of course, those of you who are fans know that anytime I'm in my LA apartment, over my right shoulder would be, Davey?
Humphrey Bogart.
Humphrey Bogart. So that was a very opaque clue just for the fans. On Facebook, the clue was the writer of our next classic had this to say of his own screenplay: "It has more corn than the states of Kansas and Iowa combined. But when corn works, there's nothing better." And that's the quote from Julius Epstein, who was one of the 3 writers on Casablanca. Guys, what do you think about that quote?
That's a great quote.
It's delicious.
The puns just they're starting more and more these days, and I don't know if it's just me. I'm not feeling them the same way as I used to.
I don't think that was really a pun. I think I was just describing the quote.
No, I thought it was a reference to the corn. Didn't you, Davey?
Yeah, I think maybe you're just getting old and jaded, man.
Well, that's very possible.
I don't know what you're talking about.
And that's the perfect. Jaded and old is the perfect time for my beer opening. Oh wow, I got a little spray. So I'm drinking a little Elm City tonight from an unfortunate part of the country. J Money, what do you got?
Got a little Gander Island over here.
Oh my God, that's my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that was my favorite?
I do seem to see you drinking it quite a bit.
Yeah, well, that's what I do. And Davy Joe, you've got a little gin there, right? In a bottle?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah.
Drunk Davy strikes again. All right, so that's what we're drinking. And now it's time for the summary. And guys, I have to tell you, as many times as I've seen this movie, I had the hardest time summarizing it in a brief paragraph for this show. I actually went through several revisions. It was actually kind of challenging. So this is what we came up with. Everybody comes to Rick's Café Americain in the city of Casablanca during the dark days of the Second World War. Rick's fulfills different needs for different people. For some, it's a safe haven. For others, a political forum. For some, it's an escape. And for others, it's a prison. It's initially unclear what it is to the enigmatic but universally admired proprietor Rick, the namesake of the cafe. One day, Rick finally reveals a human side when his ex-lover Ilsa walks into the cafe on the arm of the leader of the Czech resistance, whom the Nazis are in town to finally capture. All right, guys, how do we do with that summary? I was a little nervous about that one.
That's good.
No,
That's good.
Yeah, it was a little more poetic than your usual summaries. I think you put a little more effort into it, a little more elbow.
Is that right? I was told I used too many adjectives.
You did. You sounded very nice.
Thank you, flowery. but yeah, I mean, like, it was hard to consolidate all that happens in Casablanca into a paragraph. I was surprised that I thought I could do that like lickety split. So we screened this film actually twice. It was on the docket for us to talk about for a long time because I screened it in LA on April 12th of 2016. But then again, I was here in New York, and Jay Menny and I we spent New Year's together, and we went to see it at Film Forum as a special New Year's screening. Figured might as well, since we had to talk about it anyway.
It's true. It was a perfect way to ring in the new year.
It's true. And take a look at this video. We have a vlog here. Those of you that watch the vlogs may remember this, us vlogging in front of the Film Forum that very evening. And here's a very awkward moment where Jay Money hugs me. It was a very weird, strange moment.
Still burns.
Hopefully we don't have to relive that one again.
I took so many chemical showers after that, but I think it was for the best.
Well, it was your idea. I was like, what is going on? I was just very confused.
I mean,
Davey,
was pretty drunk.
Yeah. We're not started drinking yet. What are you talking about?
I showed up drunk. Was that not apparent? I just
I guess I should always just assume.
Just assume, yeah, pretty much.
At both screenings, though, both the LA screening and this Film Forum screening, I was surprised that there were some mixed feelings about the movie. Some people that came, and it was, some people loved it. Some were blown away, quite frankly. Others felt gypped and said it was an overrated movie. So it'll be interesting to see what you guys had to say about it. And I'm going to let Davey go first. Davey, where does this fall on the Davey scale?
It's probably, definitely top 5 all time for me. I love this movie.
This is solid then. It's on the Davey scale.
Yeah, it's pretty solid.
Okay, Jay Money, opening thoughts.
I believe it also falls in Davey's top 5 of all time, for me.
I wonder what, for you, is also on Davey's top 5. And that tells me nothing, so I don't know what you're trying to...
I really love this film. I am a big fan of this film.
And those of you fans know that this is in my top 10 of all time as well. I think it's a masterpiece and one of the greatest films ever made. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty and talk about why it's one of the greatest films ever made. And I wonder if you guys know what probably be with the very first thing that I cite as why this is one of the greatest films of all time. I'm going to let Davey guess first.
Wow.
What's the number one thing that stands out to you about this movie?
To me, I think that my favorite thing about this movie is the performance of Humphrey Bogart.
Okay, that's wrong. That's not what I was going to say. I think Money knows, though.
The inclusion of Nazis? I know you're a sucker for that.
Only because they remind me of you. What about the movies stands out in terms of what makes it so good?
To you specifically?
No, I think to anyone. I think I thought this would be a lot easier. The screenplay, I think, is the thing that really takes it up a notch. I mean, I think it's generally considered to be the greatest screenplay ever. And I mean, I suppose we could debate about that, but I mean, like, it certainly feels like a strength. And one of the first things that everybody talks about in the talkbacks, the one in LA, is the dialogue. The dialogue itself being probably the sharpest of all time. Not only is this the most quotable movie of all time, it's also, there's so many films that actually derive their titles from quotes from the film, one of which we discussed in episode 32.3.
What was that movie?
Round Up.
Round Up. Oh, The Usual Suspects. That's right. There we go.
Oh, yeah. Man, these guys are not with me tonight. It's 9 Eastern, 6 something Pacific for Davey, and they're just not, the synapses are not firing. So yeah, guys, the dialogue, it's sharp wit. Something that somebody said in the LA screening is it makes love to people with their words, which I thought was an interesting quote, even more flowery for me. The dialogue gives the film sort of heightened reality because everybody's witty in this little world. It's not necessarily following verisimilitude, but the dialogue is so sharp that you almost forgive it. And of course, the legacy of the dialogue. What do you guys have to say about the dialogue?
It's a movie that kind of changes the way you speak for the rest of your life. You know, I mean, I feel like you use things from it all the time. So, you know, I feel like this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, which I believe is a line that we referenced during The Guest.
That's right. And you actually said it to me once a couple years ago. So that was really sweet. So J Money, what about you on this issue of the dialogue?
Yeah, I agree that there's a lot of very famous phrases that have come out of this movie that have sort of soaked their way through pop culture at this point, to the point where I think a lot of people actually even know phrases from this movie more so than they know anything about the movie itself. I think there's a lot of people that recognize certain, things like "Play It Again, Sam" or "Well, It's at Paris." Or
he never actually says "Play It Again, Sam," but you're right.
Yeah. Well, what does he say? He says something that's similar, though, doesn't he?
He said, "You played it for her, you play it for me."
Okay. I guess I just feel like there are so many like pop cultural touch points in this film that even if you don't know the film personally, even if you've never seen it, there are things you probably recognize from it. But having said that, GB, I think that, getting back to your first quote from the guy that was talking about the corn in this film, the dialogue itself can be very debatably corny. I mean, it really depends on who's watching it, I think, based on what they think about it.
Man, I don't know. I think it's really sharp at times. I think, and one of the other famous ones, I'm shocked to find gambling, going on in this establishment. You know, the moments like that, and there's a ton of them throughout the film. Do you guys have, so you're saying it's actually, as much as it's celebrated, it's not that high quality dialogue. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I guess what I would say is that the dialogue itself is famous now because it stood the test of time. But is it like the most well-written prose in the world or dialogue in general? It's hard to, I don't think it necessarily is.
Does the dialogue fit each of the characters?
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with that. I guess my point is more like, the dialogue suits the nature of the film, which is dealing with a lot of really outsized personalities. So, but
that's the heightened reality I was talking about.
It's the heightened reality you're talking about, exactly. So, it's interesting to me that the script is considered, or the screenplay is considered so strong, because ultimately it's not like the most realistic screenplay. It's not the most realistic representation of how people talk. And yet, I absolutely agree with you that it is timeless. There is incredibly quotable. It's beloved for the most part. So it's a thing that has survived, all these years.
But not beloved by everyone that came to the screenings. There was like 2 people at each screening that was like, I don't know about this movie.
People.
And we'll get to that. Do you guys have a favorite line before I move away from dialogue?
I'd pick one, but I think I'd regret it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And for the rest of my life.
Well played. J Money's thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to remember like a more obscure quote.
Just to be obscure.
Well, there were so many great lines in this movie, and there are things that I never think about until I watch it again, and then there's the ones that we all know.
One of my favorites is somewhat obscure, but I think I bring it up enough that it's not obscure. Is when he's like, "Why did you come to Casablanca?" "I came for the waters. It's a desert." I guess I was misinformed. I love that.
There is so much wonderful patter between those two characters. I mean, that's
so good.
It's an amazing thing. Yeah.
Do you want to try and put one out there right now? I bought you some time.
Well, I guess, to me, as much as it's not like a great line, this is the start of a beautiful friendship at the end. Is such a wry note to end on the movie. I mean, it's not really intended the same way that it sounds like if you've never seen the movie before.
Which, in fairness, it was not written until like months after they wrapped production. It was an ADR thing.
Yeah. Really? I have heard that a lot of the lines in this movie were actually kind of made in production, or at least in the script.
Oh yeah, the script pages were coming in like that. That's what I think. The story of it is why maybe the screenplay is so exalted. Is script pages were coming in like randomly, and they were just trying to put it together. The actors had no idea what they were saying and why they were saying it half the time. It was kind of a harried production and kind of a fun story in that regard. But I'm going to move. And the other great one is when he says to Ugarte, Ugarte asks if you despise him, and he's like, "If I thought about it, maybe I would." I love that line as well. So anyway, the other thing that I think is great about the screenplay is the tone, because it's, like we always talk about movies being emotionally engaging and cerebrally engaging, and I feel like this one is both in equal measure. Like it's really intelligent, but at the same time has so much heart and gets you emotionally involved. Are you guys going to disagree with that one?
Not at all.
No.
Okay.
No, it deals with really big, epic ideas and conflicts, and it also does them in a way that feels, I don't mean like there's such a sense of humor that runs throughout it that humanizes the entire thing in a way.
Yeah, for sure. We touched on this a little bit with the dialogue, but the characters, I feel like there's so many individual characters that are so well drawn, and that's another thing, like strength of the screenplay. I mean, casting too, but I mean, like, I think that element is in the screenplay, like, because it's not just Bogart, Bergman, Henri, and Rains. There's all these little vignette characters that are so strong and well drawn.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you're right. There was a lot of care given to each character. There are no throwaways.
Is there anything else in the screenplay that I didn't touch on that you guys wanted to mention?
I'd say that the thing that kind of sticks out to me is it's kind of a complicated plot, but on the other hand, I feel like this is a movie that anyone could just kind of walk into the room and just pick it up at any point and still enjoy it.
I think it's unfair to say that having seen it as many times as we had, because I think it's complex enough that I feel like people that came to both screenings were seeing it for the first time. There are things that they didn't understand.
It's not really possible for you to not understand it, but to still be able to enjoy like just the individual scenes and pick it up and enjoy it without maybe be a little lost, but still have a good time with it.
We talked about the screenplay. A lot of people talk about the screenplay, but I do want to unpack some things that not everybody, like everybody talks about everything when it comes to Casablanca, but a lot of people talk about performances. Maybe we'll get to them, but I do want to talk about something that's not talked about as much, and that's the cinematography and camera work of Casablanca, which I think is really strong. And I want to start by talking about the framing. And their use of profile shots, which I think is very evocative because everybody's sort of hiding something, and I think profiles really bring that out. The depth in these images, they're on sets, but they still manage to create a lot of depth in these frames, and the use of high and low angles, and a lot of times either give power to a character or take power away. High angles sort of diminish a character in their standings, and this movie uses that not too much, just the right amount, and in an effective way. So, like, in terms of framing, I think those are some things that this film excels at. I
do feel like there were a lot of shots of Rick that are shot from below. Is that correct? Or does he just seem to be towering because he's Humphrey Bogart,
He's a little short, so that's one of the reasons, but it also gives the character strength and importance. And yeah, it's definitely low-angle shots for a reason.
Sure.
Yeah, the shot that springs to mind is when he's playing the song, and Bogart busts through the door, and he's like, "I told you never play that." He looks like he's 10 feet tall in that scene.
Some good stuff. And Jim, I probably want to talk about this. I think the use of shadow, lighting in general, but particularly the use of the interplay between light and shadow in the cinematography.
Yeah, I mean, some really great scenes where they're obviously trying to evade certain people. I mean, there's a whole sense of the wartime effort, the fact that they have to sort of skulk through the shadows and around factions around them. There's a lot of great interior shots when they're hiding up in Rick's little office area as well. I mean, there's just a lot of the great sense of I think, depth from incredibly high contrast sort of scenes.
Yeah, and scenes that have a very film noir type element before film noir was like the norm. Like they're dabbling in light film noir prior to Casablanca, particularly in Maltese Falcon, starring a lot of these same actors. Anything on the cinematography, on the lighting anyway, Davy Joe?
I think you pretty much covered it.
That means he has no idea what we're talking about. I
will say that it's interesting to me because this is a movie that's theoretically set in the desert, even though obviously they didn't really film it there. It's funny to me that the film entirely consists of like interior shots. It's not really about easily shown, the sun beating down and the harshness of the environment or whatever, but it's really not about that at all. And it's really about all these kind of like pleasant interior set up as sophisticated sort of oases for these people that are around them. And it's interesting that light and shadow and noir, because it's such an environment that you wouldn't necessarily expect that kind of effect. And
one thing we talk about all the time on the show is how interiors are frequently harder to light and shape, cinematically than exteriors. And so it's a lot of times films with a lot of exteriors win cinematography Oscars, but really the real challenge is lighting the interiors. And this film, gave themselves that challenge and embraced it. So the other thing I think from a cinematography point of view that I think is really terrific about this film that doesn't get talked about as much is how strong the camera movement is. And back at a time when camera movement was not as used or utilized tons of pans and dollies, especially going through the cafe at times. And they didn't have Steadicam. It was all dolly shots and zooms. No, sorry, not zooms. Dolly shots and pans. There was no zoom lens really, and there was no Steadicam. So the fluid movements really kept the atmosphere of the cafe alive.
Absolutely.
Davey Joe.
It did.
Got me here. All right. Another thing that I feel like, because everybody talks about Casablanca, I want to maybe unpack some of the things that doesn't get talked about as much. Let's talk about the editing, which I think is super important in this movie. And the first thing I want to point to, as far as that's concerned, is the terrific use of glances and reaction shots in this movie. The most famous example is the very end, leading up to the final round up the usual suspects. Somebody is killed, and there's a look between Bogart to Rains, back to Bogart before Rains. That's the most famous sort of shot, reverse shot moment. But there's tons of little things like that where they use reaction shots in a very effective way to advance the story.
That's a really good point. I think it kind of goes hand in hand with performances, but you're right. The editing and knowing when to cut into a shot like that is it's half the battle, along with the performances.
You really want to talk about the performances, so maybe we'll get there. We're running out of time, but the other thing about the editing is the way that they mixed sprinkled in a very effective way, and it never distracted. All the little subplots mixed in with the main plot. You think about that Bulgarian couple, for example, which really didn't have that big an impact, but they were so well integrated into the thing, and they're important to a degree, specifically when it comes to character development of both Absolutely. Claude Rains' character and Rick. It wasn't necessary. It was a great detail. There's lots of little things like that, the pickpocket and all the little things going on that was handled. That's not. I don't think that's an element of the screenplay, because especially the way I was talking about it earlier, they're just bringing pages. They just wrote everything. They just wrote tons and tons of pages. And it's the editor that's making this all work.
There's a lot of talking around certain things. There's a lot of talking around certain details. So getting back to your glances, for instance, I think that it's a large part of the way the characters interact, in part because of how the storyline itself is sort of suggesting that they have to be there in this environment. There are lots of other side characters, like you're pointing out, the Bulgarian character, the German barkeep guy. Everybody has kind of their own separate thing going on, and they all kind of work in tandem.
The bartender was Russian.
Oh, he's Russian. Isn't he German in real life, though?
I don't know what he's in real life. The Mater D guy was German.
Maybe I'm thinking of the Mater D guy then. There was somebody, I'm thinking of, SC Stakala, so I'm thinking of Carl.
The fat Mater D was German, and the thin bartender was Russian.
Okay, I'm thinking of the fat Mater D, definitely. I guess I feel like there's a lot of different characters that are imbued with personalities, even though they're small parts. Everybody is sort of iconic in this film. Everybody has their 15 minutes.
I think it's the editor that found those moments to make it, because it never feels slow. The pace of the movie is amazing, and I feel like to balance all that out, that is a huge achievement from an editorial point of view.
Yeah, how long is the movie itself?
It's less than
42 minutes.
Yeah. 102 minutes.
Even for modern audiences, I just think it's long pretty well.
Yeah, no, but I mean, and they pack a lot in,
Yeah.
I've got a clip here that sort of puts this all together, and this is sort of a famous scene, but not one of the most famous, not the most famous scene. It's sort of like maybe top 10 famous scenes, and we call this the La Marseillaise scene. Take a look.
Wait.
So guys, I feel like a lot of the things that we just talked about are all in this like 2.5-minute clip or however long it is. The glances and reactions. Claude Rains looking disapproving of the German singing, even though he's supposedly Vichy. And then he checks on Rick to see how Rick thinks. And then Ingrid Bergman nearly hyperventilating at her chair, smartly worrying about the aftermath of her husband coming on and doing La Marseillaise. And even, the nod, which is the most famous nod in history coming from Rick. When Rick came on, when Humphrey Bogart shot that scene and nodded, he had no idea what he was nodding at. Like, they hadn't figured out that scene yet. He's like, just walk up and nod to someone. And he's like, okay. And they put it all together in the edit room. And also, like, this scene sort of talks about our main plot versus subplot, because the Yvonne character in this scene, her arc sort of completes in this scene when she starts singing La Marseillaise, sort of rediscovering, her roots again, and she's not in the movie that much, but this is a really satisfying arc to her character. And then also the camera movement is utilized in this like 2-minute sequence. The pan to Claude Rains' character, the prefect of police, to get his reaction, and the dolly in to Ilsa as she's looking concerned, and also in love. She's like in love. Her subtextual look is like, I'm in love with you, but you're an idiot for putting yourself in danger like this. The other thing that this is a good example of is the pace, the way that this starts out slow and builds up to be this highly emotional crescendo of this, of the French nationals sort of overtaking the Germans, in this small victory. Anyway, so that's why I show the clip. What do you guys have to say about it?
Yeah, I always I think that was a great clip to show, and I think that you can kind of see the struggle of Rick. He's trying to maintain his neutrality, or at least the facade of neutrality, but you can see him like fighting it. And it's really I think that that shot of him standing on the balcony, watching that is really, really great.
And with Paul Henri like right behind him fuming, and he's trying to keep an even keel. Like the contrast between them, I think, is really interesting. One of the things that I've often talked about with this movie is like there's two kinds of men in this world, and you get to choose which one you be. You can either be a Rick or you can be Paul Henri. I'm forgetting his character name. Laszlo?
Yeah, Laszlo.
Laszlo. Yeah. You're either a Rick or a Laszlo in this world. I would like to be a Rick, but that's probably because, he's cooler. Hey, Money, anything on that scene?
It's such a crucial scene because I think it's something where the audience finally gets a sense of the cementing of the morality of all the major characters in this film. I mean, I think that up until this point, kind of a loose affiliation of people on the outskirts of society, people that are just going through, people that are kind of like, they're refugees. There are people that are legitimately trying to escape, but there are also people there that are trying to make a profit and trying to like take advantage of the escapees. But here you have this one act that actually unites all these disparate different elements to very clear lines of morality. It's very much the good guys versus the bad, everyone versus the Nazis in this situation. It's specifically French, but I mean, like,
I know how you sympathize.
That really unites. Yeah, exactly. And it's a point that really unites, I think, all the characters in a way that helps guide your understanding of the narrative for the rest of the film.
Yeah. How do you feel about as a sample of the strong editing that I was talking about?
Oh, yeah. I mean, going back to the editing specifically, I love the fact that it's all queued up silently. I mean, to your point, Bogart nods, and then the orchestra strikes up, and people stand up and join in as they feel compelled to. And because of the way that it builds, because of that, the way that you see emotion play out in everybody's face, there's so many different stories going on at the same time. It all gets wrapped up into this triumphant song. So it all fits together in a way that's really impressive, and it's all together in like 2 minutes because it's all a song, There's so much being said all at once.
And I didn't have this note, but
everybody's saying the same thing. It's to Le Marseillaise. So.
Yeah, one of the things that just occurred to me as you're talking is nothing really happens, even though like the hero of the scene is Laszlo, nothing really happens without Rick. Like it doesn't happen without Rick not. And he's sort of like this behind the scenes hero in his own way. And it's really fascinating that he's sort of allowing the glory to go to Laszlo, but it's really nothing happens without him. So it's interesting in that way as well. All right, so we're running out of time. But Davy Joe really wanted to talk about the performances, and I allowed a little time for that. Davy Joe, what do you got?
Well, I mean, I touched on it a little bit with Bogart. I just think the way that he emotes and shows heartbreak. Yeah, I mean, I think it's as good as I've ever seen. It's just his expressions and I'm that scene that we talked about where he's standing on the balcony watching the Germans sing their anthem and just kind of boiling over. I just think it's up there with some of the best that I've ever seen.
It's definitely his best performance and a perfect role for him. And he got universal acclaim in the screenings that we had. Beautiful subtext, pain and love beneath the cynical veneer, which I think is what's really special about it. It's an iconic portrayal. We had some controversy about some of the other performances. Before I get to that, J Money, anything on Bogart? Anything that hasn't been said already?
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not necessarily the hugest Bogart fan in the world, but I do believe that this is like the perfect role for him, and it's the thing where he really shines. It's the thing he's made for.
He's really good in The Maltese Falcon too.
Yeah,
The big debate in our screening, however, was Ingrid Bergman. Because a lot of the people in both audiences, particularly LA, said she was way over the top. I feel the opposite about her. I'm not a big Ingrid Bergman fan, like you were saying about Bogart, generally speaking. I think she's bad in movies like For Whom the Bell Tolls, which, by the way, she was nominated for instead of Casablanca. It came out the same year, in 1943. But I think here, she does very subtle work, especially in her reactions. I think the clip we just watched says a lot to that end, and I think her eyes say volumes. Like, what the work that she's doing just with her eyes alone, I think is really special in this movie. Guys, there's a big debate about this in the LA screening. How do you feel about Ingrid Bergman?
I mean, I come down on your side. I think she does a great job in this movie. I think that you can see the conflict on her face, and even when it's when she's not speaking that she's even the best. I just think that it's a tough position to be in, and she shows it to me. I don't know.
I'm surprised to hear that people thought that she was too much in this. I really didn't feel that way at all. I think that she was, very spot on with the way that she was emoting. So,
cool. Well, at least we're here to that. We also had an argument about Claude Rains. The screening was sort of split on him as well. One of the people even used the word foppish. I thought he was amazingly witty, a perfect foil for Bogart, going toe-to-toe to him in those scenes. I think he's outstanding. J Money, I'll let you go first on this one.
It's funny to me because we saw it at New Year's. It's the first time because I'd never been around other people that were laughing at things. It's an amazingly funny movie, and he gets most of those lines. He is the one that's really on the beat there with most of the comedic timing.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that he did a great job with a lot of things in this movie.
He's great, and I echo that. His comedic timing is wonderful.
There's lots of other actors in this movie, little ones, and I don't want to go into each of them, but is there anyone you want to single out for any reason?
I really like Peter Lorre in this film. I guess partly because I like Peter Lorre in general, but I think that there's such a desperation to his character.
That you like Peter Lorre. Why is that no shock? I'm shocked to learn.
No shock.
Peter Lorre.
I like the desperation in his character. I like the sliminess of his character as well. There's a lot of things I like about him in this movie, and he's only in there for a few minutes anyway. So
you identified with him. I understand. Davy Joe.
Yeah, exactly.
I like him too. I always think the one scene in that movie that I think is a little ridiculous is when there's like 5 soldiers carrying him away, and he's like, Rick. Like, I mean, I don't know what does he think Rick's gonna do at that point?
You got to help me, Rick.
Yeah, right. Anyway.
All right, guys. It's time for the classic movie showdown. Boom! Yeah. Okay, so we always start the classic movie showdown with a reading of the rules by our good friend Dave Joseph. Davey.
The movies are shown at screenings that you host. People watch them. Movies that have to be at least 15 years old or older. In order to vote, everyone has to have seen the movie in your presence and within 1 year. And you don't get to vote unless, of course, the vote matters. You can break a tie.
They have to see both films within a 12-month period. But yes, that's the basic gist of it. All right, so we're on the AFI bracket tonight, and we got a second round matchup coming up. So let me fill you in on what's going on in the first round. In the first round, Casablanca is a #1 overall seed going up against number 16 seed American Graffiti. And then in the other part of this bracket is a bracket that we did in episode 18.3, where number 8 seed Apocalypse Now goes up against number 9 seed Annie Hall. Do you guys remember that episode of Apocalypse Now? What won between Apocalypse Now and Annie Hall?
No.
I do.
Yeah, I emailed you the answer, so you don't get to count on
I
that.
don't remember
That's
who won.
bullshit.
Annie Hall would beat Apocalypse Now, and
Okay.
Casablanca, of course, is the number 1 seed, would defeat American Graffiti in the AFI bracket, which sets up this round 2 bracket of 2 of my top 10 films of all time, head-to-head. Number 1 seed Casablanca versus number 9 seed Annie Hall. This is a huge matchup to me. One of the toughest. I mean, like, it's easy for me because I've already pre-ranked them. Like, one's number 7 in my list and one's number 10. So, you know, but it's so close to be that. 2 movies that close in my top 10 head-to-head is huge. Davey, we know that Casablanca is top 5 for you. Where do you land on this one?
I mean, I have to go with Casablanca. I do love Annie Hall a lot. Probably my second favorite Woody Allen movie. Maybe top 10 also, but Casablanca.
Was this one of the toughest ones?
Oh yeah, this is just really tough. Although I think Apocalypse Now and Annie Hall's tough also.
J Money, Casablanca versus Annie Hall.
Casablanca. I like Annie Hall, but I don't like Annie Hall nearly as much as you guys. And I would go Apocalypse Now over Annie Hall. I would go Casablanca over Annie Hall. So.
Out of curiosity, if Apocalypse Now had one, would you Casablanca versus Apocalypse Now?
Casablanca. I would still go Casablanca first. I just feel like it is.
Casablanca makes it to the Sweet 16 for you regardless. So that's out of those 4,
I think so.
It would make it.
Yeah.
So now for me, Casablanca is my number 10 movie of all time, and Annie Hall is my number 7 movie of all time. I described already how there was some mixed feelings in the LA group about Casablanca. So the winner is Annie Hall. Actually moves on here to the Sweet 16 of the AFI bracket. And there's shock in the room here. But Annie Hall moves on, and I didn't vote, even though it's, you know, my number 7 movie of all time. I actually didn't vote for that. It was the room itself, and I was surprised. I thought Casablanca was going to win it, and you guys did as well. But Annie Hall moves on. Casablanca is eliminated. How do you guys feel?
It's terrible. The world is crazy right now. That's all I can say to this. It's the world.
I feel like I've been more angry at some of the results, but I'm not remembering right now.
Okay, so guys, I'm going to start wrapping things up. Any closing thoughts you want to say before I give the trivia for next time?
I guess I would encourage people that haven't seen Casablanca to go out and watch it, because we're talking about how great it is because it's become such a classic and because it's gotten so many pop cultural references over the years. But I think as the 75th anniversary happened, I think this past year, a lot of people talked about how
that's a sketchy thing.
Sadly, a lot of things were.
Technically, it's not its 75th anniversary. Like, it was released, like the Oscars did things differently. Technically, yeah, it was released in the fall of 1942, but it was eligible for the 1943 Oscars. So really, we should be celebrating next year the 75th anniversary. But you're not totally.
I see. Okay. Well, yeah, outlets sort of picked up on it, and they use it as a reason to talk about it, because I feel like there's a lot of themes in terms of international conflict in this movie that, you know, we've also seen repeated now for the last year and a half or so. So yeah, an incredibly relevant movie, even for modern audiences. And I think it's part of the reason maybe it has there are certain things in it that people come back to find metaphors for allusions to in modern times.
It's also a fun movie. Like, it's a really enjoyable 102 minutes. Like, it's captivating, and a lot of people love it for good reason. So if you have not seen it, it's well worth your while. It's not one of those old movies that'll feel like torture, like something like Gone with the Wind would be to some people.
Yeah. Good point.
Yes.
Real good point.
Thank you. All right, so my trivia tidbit for the next classic, and who knows when that's going to be, sometime in September probably, but our next classic is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, and its title inspired the names of Bill Money's kids in the film Unforgiven. How's that for a fun little random tidbit?
Right.
The next time we're going to do a sound off. That's going to be in 5 days, August 15th, 2017. And I'm going to do a report on our visit to the Turner Classic Movies Festival in Los Angeles, which happened at this point 4 months ago. I have a second run movie, which it was related to the TCM Fest. And we are going to do a top 5 films that we reviewed in 2016, and that should cause some debate. So that is coming up on our next Sound Off, our freeform segment, in just 5 days. We will see you then. For now, the No Name Cinema Society is adjourned.